All right, hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Love, Growth, and Freedom with Adrian Duarte. Welcome to our season 6. Wow, season 6. I can't believe it. I've been doing this for almost like a year because I started March 6th, and I just want to say thank you to all of you lovies who's been listening to me in this podcast. Now, again, if you are here on your first time or you're following this season is all about making mistakes and understanding that we are allowed to make mistakes. The first two episodes of this season was allowing yourself to have that space, that margin to actually make mistakes. So I've been reading throughout, I've read this book actually. We have to actually give ourselves a margin in a room to make mistakes because we are humans. And a lot of the things that we do in our lives are not always certain. They're not always that perfect planned out life. We're always going to have adversities along our way. Some things are not going to go our way, and sometimes we're going to slip up and make mistakes. So you always have to leave a margin for error. Okay? So that's the first part. And the second part we discuss about allowing yourself, make mistakes when you can. If you have a moment and a time to be a newbie, someone somewhat of a beginner, take the most of it. Try as much as you can, learn, make mistakes. It's a hit or miss and all the likes. Now, we have to do and we have to allow ourselves to have that moment in our lives. We have to allow ourselves to find us of who we are by trying new things and not being afraid to make those mistakes, because I know a lot of people, a lot of us are afraid of making mistakes because we always think that these mistakes would define us. Now, in the past episodes we've discussed it does not define who you are. Your mistakes are only things that happen to you, and they're not supposed to be one thing that would define your future forever. So don't be afraid to make mistakes, and don't be afraid to allow yourself to make one. Now, on this episode 3, the objective of this episode, we are here to tell you and help you out that knowing fully well that you made mistakes and it's a part of our lives, we must learn from it. We have to learn from our mistakes. These mistakes that we commit are things we have to reflect on to prevent us from making the same mistakes over again. To not let ourselves be consumed by just the idea that these mistakes are all that we're made of. Okay, we are not our mistakes. We may be doing a lot of things in our lives and make a lot of mess out of it, but that doesn't mean that we're a mess as a person and as people. It just means that we are not afraid to try, and we are not afraid to learn and grow and face the world and the adversity as it is. Yeah. Okay. Wow. That's deep. Because for me, mistakes, a lot of people are afraid of making mistakes. I am afraid of making mistakes. I usually, you know, I'm a person that usually does everything by the book first, learn the ropes, learn the whatever, and then that's when I actually put my little twist in it in life. I'll give you an example. So I always give example about sports and how I do things in sports because I'm a very active person. Now, for example, in roller skating and cheer, I would always try to learn the techniques. I would always try to understand the foundations of the moves, the techniques that I'm going to do in order to do the flips, in order to do the jumps, in order to do the things that I want to do on these sports. Now, I won't always get it right. I won't always get it right. Somebody will correct my form, somebody will whatever. Now I'm going to do it over again. And you know what? It's scary. The only reason I think of when I put this down into sports, it's scary to make a mistake in these sports because if you do, it can cost you your career, your legs, or whatever, and it's really, really, really scary. And I think that's how life is. When we talk about mistakes, we don't want to make a mistake that would gravely affect our lives. And I think in life, making grave mistakes like that is always a risk, or making mistakes in general is always a risk. Now, how do we lessen those risks? Is we have to actually listen and understand and learn from these mistakes that did not cost us a big engraved thing. So, this is where the episode comes in, right? So, I learn techniques, and then when I show it to a coach and they're like, okay, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to focus on this, I will do my best to correct that mistake, doing that skill. And then at a certain point, when I keep doing it and learning it and relearning all those stuff, I'm able to do the skill that I want to do. So I think putting that in the perspective of life, when things happen, when people tell us certain things that we have to coordinate, we have to fix, we have to improve on, we have to take it by heart, or we have to take it in with a grain of salt and then take it by heart, reflect on these mistakes, reflect on the things that we have to work on, and then we have to improve ourselves over that. So that was the previous season as well. Now this one specifically on mistakes, because we are bound to make mistakes. We are bound to make mistakes, and that's true and honest and all the likes. Okay, but never be afraid, because these mistakes will lead you and build you up to become a better you. So if you talk about that, right, like we put a lot of people, a lot of pressure on people who was a public figure of not making mistakes, you know? And I think that's so scary to think of, because if you're in the public eye, if you're in the news, you're not supposed to make any mistakes. But that's not true. You know, we can't expect perfection from everyone, because we are humans and we will never be perfect. So you should not also put that pressure on yourself. Love is louder than the pressure to be perfect. Oh, I love that line. That came from Demi Lovato, and that lived with me for a long, long time. Even up until now, I live by that, because love is louder than the pressure to be perfect. So have compassion for yourself when you make mistakes. Now, when you talk about mistakes, these are usually honest mistakes. You know, when people say it's an honest mistake, an honest mistake is something that you actually do without the intention of hurting anyone. It was just like out of like, oh, I didn't know better. Now you have to know better. When you make these mistakes, when you make honest mistakes, you didn't know better, and you should know better after making these mistakes. Now, we're going to give some examples on that, but we call them mistakes because these are unintentional, because we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know how it would affect some other person besides us. We always would have that we could have and should have at this moment. You will think that, oh, we could have done this more. We could have done this. I should have done this. The what ifs. Now, instead of thinking always about the what ifs, when you make these mistakes, you have to think of what do I do next to make things better? What do I do next to avoid this same mistake? Because if you are going to repeat the mistake over and over again, I don't think that's a mistake anymore. That's a choice that you've done to not educate yourself, to not improve on the things that you have to learn, and still stick with the same thing that keep doing and doing and doing and doing, and keep committing the same mistakes. I don't think that's a mistake anymore. That's a decision. That's a lifestyle. That's a choice that you did. Now, if you deliberately make these mistakes without making any changes and learning from this, you really have to think now. Maybe it isn't a mistake. Maybe this is deliberate. Maybe this is something that I refuse to acknowledge and work on. Because if it keeps on going and going and going, well, you kind of have to take a pause, reevaluate, and see. Are you still really, is it really still a mistake? Or is it an internal thing that you have to work on with yourself? So, yeah, my view on that, when you talk about, mistakes, honest mistakes, these are mistakes that, like, for example, I was an intern at this company, and then I was using an account of a client, and I did not know that I wasn't able to switch the account of the client to my personal account to buy and purchase my own coffee syrup. And then I got booted from that company. That was a bad one. I was sad about that, but it was an honest mistake. I did not intentionally do it, and now I learned from it. I did not fight anybody because of it. I knew it. I acknowledged my mistake. But then again, I know better now. And the next time I'm going to be able to handle this, I'm not going to do the same mistakes again. You know what I mean? So that's when you make those mistakes. Honest mistakes are mistakes that you actually don't really know that you did, and you weren't educated enough. Now, if you're going to put this in social issues and social ideas, this is like you didn't know that calling someone gay today is very offensive now, or calling someone gay as an insult is now an offensive thing. It's a slur, and it's not something that you actually have you can do right now anymore, because it's not acceptable, because you are invalidating a person's existence and all the likes, and you are putting them down because you have different connotations of what being gay means and all the likes. Now, if you're saying, oh, you're gay because you're afraid, and somebody gets offended and all the likes, especially with me, I would be like that. But you have to learn now. You didn't know that you're not supposed to use that anymore, or you didn't know that you're not supposed to use that word. You say sorry, but if you use it again in the same context, I don't think that's your personal choice of not accepting and respecting people of that community. I hope that I made a point. But if you really didn't know, we put that in social issues. If you didn't know that, um, a lot of things, for example, are interrelated, interconnected, intersectional. So if you didn't know better, you really have to educate yourself. Let's talk about well, when we talk about races here, and we talk about ethnic differences, racial differences. If you call someone the N word, if you call someone this one, and you're not someone from their community, that is wrong. But if you said it, you said it, and you didn't know that that was wrong. Okay, I think you are to be forgiven. It was a mistake, but you have to know better and you have to dig in deeper. It's not just knowing better and saying, I'm sorry. No, you say sorry, you learn from that mistake, and you help other people not to commit the same mistakes again. And this is what I'm trying to do to you. You know, if you already made a mistake, tell other people, I made this mistake, don't make this mistake. You know, take the extra mile if you make mistakes at least. Even if even if it was an honest mistake. I think that's the best way to repatriate something that you did wrong. Okay? Now, you don't only learn from mistakes, like we don't only learn from making them and committing mistakes. Like, yeah, okay, that was a mistake. But if you don't reflect upon these mistakes, if you don't dig deep on why we had those mistakes, why we were led to those mistakes, I don't think we'll ever understood or completely learn from the mistakes that we've made. So you really have to reflect on it. So, you know, when you make an honest mistake, instead of just acknowledging it, told you, take the extra mile, reflect upon it, make sure you're not going to do it again, and then you can help out, educate other people as you go through your life and say, don't make the same mistakes that I did because this was the one that came along and I don't want you to make the same one. You know? Okay. Now that you're aware of it, you have to learn from it and ponder. You know, you have to reflect, you have to understand what were the things that misled you to that kind of information? What were the things that you were doing wrong and that you have to correct, and how are you going to correct them? It's not always just, oh, I made a mistake, I'm not going to do it again. How are you not going to do it again? Right? Like, makes sense? You know what I mean? Instead of just saying, I did it wrong thing, I'm not going to do it again. How are you going to promise, or how are you going to be better? And how are you going to do that? What are your steps? How are you going to reflect on it? That's an important integral part of learning from your mistakes. Now, you know, we talked about that, what led to those making, what led to, you know, what led it, what led you to making those mistakes, what caused it, and how you can do better to avoid it. If you don't learn from it, we waste the opportunity to actually be better and improve ourselves, okay? If you keep making the same mistakes, you gotta dig deeper. You know, we waste the chance to actually become a better person if we don't reflect on these mistakes. Now, a lot of us, when we make mistakes, let me get a drink. When we make mistakes, we don't want to dwell on it. We don't want to deal with it because it gives us shame sometimes. For me, that's one of the things that I'm trying to unlearn. When I make a mistake, I'll only say, okay, okay, I get it. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. But that's wrong. That's very wrong. When you're just gonna be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'm not gonna do it again. It's like you're still being defensive and you're still not truly acknowledging the mistake that you made, and you're gonna be like, no, I got it, I'm sorry, I'm wrong, I'm gonna do better, and that's it. If there's no any other extra mile than that, you didn't really take the time to learn from that mistake. So I'll give you an example. I hurt a friend. Okay, I hurt a friend that trusted me so much, and even if the intention of me losing her trust, like telling her secret to someone because out of care and love, even with that, I still made a mistake of breaking her trust and her confidence in me. So I apologized. I said, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. And I really did. I really, really took everything down and say, I'm very, very sorry. It was all my fault. And I wouldn't want to hurt you. And it wasn't the intention. But, I'm not going to force her to forgive me. I'm not going to force her to come back to me and be like, oh, we're all good. And like, I did something really bad and I acknowledged it. And I had to learn from that the hard way. And I think at the moment right now, we're still rebuilding the kind of friendship that we used to have. But I'm not going to force her fast. I'm not going to force up onto her that she has to forgive me and be like all good with me right after. It's just I really have to. I learned. I really sat down with myself and talked about my that mistake and understood that I made those because yeah, I'm a talkative person. I feel like I did not respect the boundaries that she put out there, and I'm like, okay, I have to learn now. that what isn't mine to tell isn't mine to tell. So it's a long story about that, but that's the thing about mistakes, you know. And you don't just acknowledge it like what I used to do. You really have to sit down and understand why this mistake happened to you, and how can you really prevent it from happening again in the future, right? What are the changes that you are going to make sure that you are going to avoid this kind of mistake? It doesn't mean that you're not going to make the same mistakes again. It doesn't mean that you're going to, a similar mistake may occur or whatever, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be fully free of mistakes. It's just you are going to be a better person now because you learned from that. You understood the gravity of the mistake that you've made because you reflected on it. Not just say, oh, I did the wrong one. I feel ashamed. I'm not going to do this anymore. And it's going to be like defensive and all the likes. No. When you've done something wrong, you apologize. When you've made a mistake, admit to the mistake, reflect, and deal with it. Don't be defensive. Don't throw back the hate. Don't be aggravating other people because, yo, I made a mistake. Okay, ako na. I'm the bad one. Gaslighting. Don't gaslight anyone. I'm the bad one. I'm the mean person. I've always been the mean person. You never understood me. You're always gonna. If you make a mistake, don't do that. Okay, don't be like, oh, don't turn the tables on you. You're not the victim here if you made the mistake. Admit to it. Okay, just one thing I want to say, because it's a thing that we usually go through. Like if you notice this is a pattern with a lot of people, and if you've met a lot of people who are somehow manipulative and gaslighters and all that, like that's how they do it, right? They have to say, oh, they say this now. Okay, you don't trust me. Or when we talk about relationships, oh, you don't trust me. It's always like that. You never trusted me. You're always waiting for me to make a mistake. That's a line that people use all the time. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not waiting for you to make a mistake. You made a mistake. Okay? Apologize to me and acknowledge your mistake. And let's deal with it. Learn from it. Don't be putting out an energy that, oh, I'm always blaming you. Like that's, yeah, those are, beware of those. I'm just gonna say. So if that's you, I suggest that you really have to take it in, understand that you are allowed to make a mistake, even if you're allowed to make mistakes, and even if you try new things and make mistakes again, yeah, fine, that's allowed, but you also have to learn from them. And now learning from them doesn't just mean like, oh, I'm gonna be, not gonna do it again. That's it. How? The integral question is, how are you gonna do it? How are you gonna stay away from that? So at some point, making the same mistakes over and over again is exhausting, and it may be rooted in something deeper that you have to understand and see through. Sometimes it would take us a longer time to unpack and unlearn, but be patient with yourself on that. Again, when you make those mistakes, you have to reflect, and when you reflect, you'd actually be pointed to a mirror and see, okay, all the things that you kind of don't like about yourself, because that's it. When you make mistakes, you don't only feel shame from other people, but also from yourself. Oh, I made this mistake. Because I let's go back to that issue where I kind of like made a Kahoot on that internship that I had, where I used a client's Instagram to reply and purchase my coffee syrup. I was so upset. I dealt with it the whole day. Though I did not fight back, I acknowledged it gracefully, and they fired me after that. And they were like, maybe this is not the perfect fit for you. And I'm like, I apologize, I agree, and I really am sorry that I caused so much inconvenience for you. I hope that maybe one day we get to work again, and blah, 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 blah. And they said I took it gracefully, and I did. But after that, after the shame, after the guilt, after the pain that I felt throughout those, I still hated myself. I was like, that was such a stupid mistake. Like, how can you do that to yourself? How are you such a dumb person to do that? Like, and I was like, okay, I gotta stop. I gotta stop putting that into my head. Then I had to reevaluate. Did I make that mistake? And I understood that I was having so much on my plate, and that was something that probably wasn't for me. And that was a thing that had to be cut because I was taking so much on my plate, and I didn't notice that I did that I took on too much on my plate. Now it led me to making more decisions soundly. It led me to learn that I have to release some things from my plates and actually set out my boundaries for that and all the likes. Now I know better. I didn't just say I was wrong and I'm not gonna do it again. Yeah. How? now I had to. Now, if I'm gonna do that again, if I'm going to be with a company and where they're gonna support me and allow me to do that thing again, community management, I'll be making sure that I'll always sign out. I'll be making sure that my head is always in the game when they tell me what to do. You know what I mean? So, and I will not be clustered. I will have to reshift everything that I have to do and give it some room and space. So I learned that. And again, when you learn from your mistakes, it's not just about acknowledging it. It's not just about saying, I'm sorry, I did it, I'm not going to do it again. No, it's taking a mile, the extra mile of understanding how you're not going to do it again. And then how are you going to help other people not to do the same mistakes again? And I think that is relevant and prevalent in the things that I do. If you are a follower from my TikTok, if you are listening through this podcast, this is why I do the podcast actually, is I try to tell people of the mistakes that I make, the things that I kind of process, try to teach you from the things that I've learned about myself and the journey that I'm in on self-love. And yeah, I'm just happy that it's helpful. I'm just happy that you're here. Thank you for being here. And before we all continue further to this discussion, I just want to say this podcast is, in partnership with Guerilla Podcast Syndicate, and they're helping me out spread the word. So if you have friends that you need to hear this, please do send my link and do follow me on my socials called Fresh FM Adrian on TikTok. If you want to hear coffee, good morning vibes, and all the likes, I do that every morning. And I also have it on my Instagram. I roller skate on my Instagram. If you want to be there, join me. And I also have a group on Facebook called Project You. And if you want to join us, we also have a group chat, Project T, where we send some love, some power, empowering, and all the likes. And I know, it's just wonderful. So I want to thank you, lovies, for staying and listening up to this point. You are wonderful. You are great. Thank you for being here. This is Love, Growth, and Freedom with Adrian Duarte. So thank you, lovies. This has been a wonderful episode. This is Learning from Your Mistakes of Season 6, Episode 3. And on our next episode, we'll be talking about best lessons that come from our mistakes. Now we are learning, we understood what we learned, and I'm going to share with you some of the best lessons that we are going to learn when we dig deeper into our mistakes. It's not always bad, and it's also not rainbows and butterflies, but it is something of an essential tool to keep us improving and keep us growing and keeping an open mind as we go through our lives. So goodbye, lovies. This is AD. I hope you have a wonderful day. See you next time. Goodbye.